The remarkable story that sheds a great deal of light on the character of David, who is acknowledged to be the greatest king of Israel. And the story is about the time that he bought a threshing floor from a man by the name of Araunah. David wanted this particular piece of real estate, this threshing floor, in order to offer a sacrifice to the Lord. The prophet Gad had said, that's the place, that's where you're to do it. Now, just why Gad had singled out that particular threshing floor is not explained, just that it was. Now, according to the story, when Araunah realized who it was, King David himself asking to buy his threshing floor, he offered it to him for nothing. He even threw in the oxen and the wood into the bargain. Take it, Lord, he said, I'm giving it to you. Now, David's astounding reply was, no, absolutely not. I will not offer burnt offerings to the Lord my God, which cost me nothing. And David paid 50 shekels of silver, a huge amount, more than a year's wages for a piece of land he could have had for nothing. What David knew, and I guess we all need to learn it deep in our heart, was that an offering that cost nothing was worth nothing. In his time, a person who was wealthy might offer one of his finest cattle as an offering. A poor person might offer a few kernels of grain. But everybody in ancient Israel offered something. And everybody offered the best that he or she could. And when we go into the New Testament, it only gets stronger, not weaker. In the Christian era, from the very beginning, we've always brought an offering to worship. If you go to the very earliest years, literally you would bring bread and wine, because they worshipped on the first day of the week, and they would worship drinking bread and wine in memory of what Christ did on the cross. They also brought money for the poor. They brought money for the poor. That was very important. And the heart of what we do has not changed since those very early years. At the heart of the offering we make Sunday by Sunday is ourselves, our lives, our hearts, our minds, our souls. That's what we offer here every Sunday. The truth is, giving money is a lot easier. You may disagree, but it really is. Giving your heart to a person, think about it. If you're giving your heart to a person, that has to be a very special person. Otherwise, you would never do that. Giving your heart to a cause, this is something everything to. That has to be a very important cause in your life, or you will never do it. Christians give their heart to Christ, and we do it with open hands, we do it with open hearts, and we do it with an absolute will and a commitment to follow wherever the Spirit will lead us. And that comes out of a tremendous feeling of gratitude for the freedom we have in Christ. Because that's what you gain, is a tremendous sense of freedom. We get it from his life and from his teachings. We get it from his death and his resurrection, and the way he sacrificed for us. Our offering is how we give back. It's the way we seek to be one with Him, the way we return our thanks to one who has given us everything. Because when you think of it, He has given us our life, and our talents, and our personalities, who you are, and our freedom. Freedom from what? Well, freedom from addictions, and freedom from depression, and freedom from illness, freedom from our sin, and in the end, freedom from death itself. What is such a gift worth? I know that on a surface level, almost all Christians that I talk to understand this. But when we push a little deeper, it often becomes a different matter, because the truth is that most of us hold back from God part of our lives. We, in effect, say, this part of me I give to God, and it tends, I like this, tends to be the best side of us, not the worst. I find that fascinating. When you're a minister, you see the best side of people, and I like that. If you're a cop, you see the worst side of people. I wouldn't like to be a cop. When you're a minister, you see the best side of people. I've always loved that. And when people say to me, yeah, but if you knew what he was really like, and I've had that happen to me, all I can say is, the side I see is also him. It's really him. The part we withhold from God, it's the darker side of us. You see, we don't want God to know that part of us. And we try to hide it. We hide it from each other, and we try to hide it from God. And most of us don't want anybody, including God, messing with our money. Why? Why are we so touchy about our money? Well, every one of us has a fear of living in poverty. It's a deep-rooted fear we have. As you get older, you want to know that you have enough money to live out your life. You don't want to have your money run out before you do. And not only that, there exists a primordial feeling that it is wealth alone that will bring pleasure and security. Pleasure and security. So how else can you account for the lengths that people are willing to go to achieve money? I mean, let's face it, the amount of deceit and absolute evil in this world that so many are willing to perpetrate in order to acquire money shows us how primordial is that feeling within us that our money is important. Now, to be honest with you, I rarely find evil people in church. The vast majority of Christians are good and caring people. I don't think I've ever really found a totally evil person in any of my churches. I found some people who are a little shady, but not really bad people. And just a ton of wonderful people. Partly that's why we're in church. Christians tend to be good and caring people. And yet over the years, I've discovered that talking about money is very, very sensitive. Asking members of a congregation to increase their givings, even if it's desperately needed, as is the case here, we're running a deficit. And you're the only ones that can help us through that. But when we do that, it rarely goes down very well. And for this reason, it's not often done. Whenever the board asks a minister to preach on stewardship, the minister always has a very sinking feeling in the pit of his stomach. Oh, no, and on stewardship. Well, at the risk of upsetting you, I want to say a couple of things about the offerings that you make Sunday by Sunday. The very first thing I want to say is this. The offering you make is the very best gauge, rather like a thermometer, of your faith and your commitment to Christ. The Apostle Paul, in a kind of throwaway line in the book of Acts, is writing about the Macedonian Christians. These were brand new Christians. He had just moved into this territory. And he says of the Macedonian Christians, he says, first, they gave themselves to the Lord, and then they gave themselves to us. He was talking about the fact that they contributed a large amount of money for the poor. And that's the way it always is. Always is. First, we give ourselves to the Lord, and only then are we willing and able to give freely to our church. You see, if our heart is not right with God, we will resent any request to increase our givings. If our heart is right, then we'll never resent that. We may not be able to respond. That depends on your circumstances. But it will never occur to you to get upset about it. I remember hearing this story years ago about a man in the southern United States who got converted at an evangelical rally. He had been a notorious reprobate. He had been a boozer, he'd been a womanizer, and everybody knew it for miles around, and his conversion was greeted with a great deal of skepticism. The following Sunday, the entire congregation gathered by the creek to watch the preacher baptize the man. And as he waded out into a stream, a few people noticed his billfold sticking out of his back pocket. So they started yelling, calling out to him, "Take it out, throw it to us, we'll hold on to it." Well, it took a minute or two before the chap realized what they were all yelling about. And when he finally realized, he held up both hands and he hollered back, "Nothing doing. If my wallet here don't get baptized along with the rest of me, I'm in real big trouble." Now, I don't even know if that story's even true. It may be apocryphal, made up. Or it might have happened somewhere at some point. But regardless, there's a deep truth to it. When you feel the love of God move in your heart, it changes you so much that you simply don't want to hold anything back. You're really glad you're here. You're just really, really glad you're here. The second thing I want to note is that what we give back to God and to others should cost us something. David would not offer a sacrifice that cost him nothing. It was unworthy. It was not fit for the Lord. Do you remember what deeply touched Jesus as he watched people putting their offerings in the temple in Jerusalem? Some people actually, who were putting in large amounts, literally would pay musicians like me to blow a trumpet. Yeah, there were trumpets back in those years. Yeah, blow a trumpet so everyone would see that they're putting a big gift in the temple offering. Was Jesus impressed? No, he wasn't. I don't know whether it's because of the lousy trumpet playing, probably not, but he wasn't impressed. But I can tell you what did touch him. There was a poor widow who put in a few coins. And her gift was a sacrifice vastly greater than the guy who hired the trumpet player. And that's what Jesus called his disciples to see. Now, I've actually watched this myself, not in the temple in Jerusalem, but in Zambia, where some of you know Wendy and I served as missionaries for 4 years. And on Sundays, I used to go out to little churches around the area close to our mission station. Some of them actually had little church buildings. Some of them would be in a school classroom, and some were right out in the open. And when the offering time came in a Zambian church, we didn't pass offering plates. The Zambian churches didn't have any. They couldn't afford them. So the offerings were brought forward in person by every person there to the communion table, and not a nice one like this one, usually a rickety old table. And they would place their gift on the offering table. So there'd be a big stream of people coming down to the front, each person placing their gift and then going back to their seat. And what would happen is the offering would be announced, the minister would announce the offering, and somebody would start singing a hymn. There were no organs or pianos, couldn't afford those either. So everybody sang a cappella. There were no hymn books. So how do you sing? Well, people knew the hymns by heart. And I mean, when I say knew them, dozens and dozens of the hymns they knew by heart. They'd memorized them. And they would get up and they would start to sing. And if the hymn ended, somebody would start another one. I never knew who was starting them. Somebody would start it, and everybody would keep singing. And as they sang, they would come forward and they would place their offering on the communion table. And there'd be a little bow, kind of a little genuflect as they did it. And I always loved the offering time in Zambia, far better than the way we do it here. My task as the pastor was to stand behind the communion table and watch people place their gifts. And many, many times I would watch a poor Zambian mother with a baby on her back. They would wrap the baby with a chitengia, piece of African cloth, and she would place a few ngwe on the table, a few coins. And I would know that that was all she had. And it touched me because, you see, I've never in my life given all that I have to the church or anyone else. I tithe. That means I give 10% of my income to this church. But that means I keep 90% of it for myself. And I doubt if any of you here have ever given all that you have. I'm not sure why it is that the more we have, the less we're willing to share. But I know that it is so. I want to close with a bit of theology, as if I've been talking anything else this morning. I want to go back to a part of what is today Turkey. It was a province of the Roman Empire called Cappadocia, and there were 3 Cappadocian priests called bishops of the 4th century, Gregory of Nyssa, Gregory of Nazianzus, and Basil of Caesarea. And those are obviously not photographs or even paintings of them, but they became known as saints. And so if you go to an Orthodox church, you would see images like that. Why they are important is they led in developing the understanding of what became known as the Trinity in the Christian church. The sense that we know God in 3 ways. We know God in the creation around us. Somehow you just know when you walk through a forest or you stand by the river, you just have this deep sense of creation. And so we call God Creator. Sometimes we call God Father or Mother, but this sense of creation. The second way we knew God was in Jesus. Somehow God walked beside us with that person, that human being, who just so bowled us over, so touched us, that we knew that the power of God was in him in a unique way. And yet we know God within us, in the Spirit. within us and between us and around us. And so there's these three ways we know God, and it remains the heart of our Christian understanding. Now, for some reason, the word that the Cappadocian Fathers came up with to describe the Trinity got dropped by the Christian church and not used. And do you know what the word was? The word was perichoresis. Perichoresis. In Greek, a perichoresis is a circle dance. And young people would dance in a circle holding hands. And that's the word those three people used to describe the Trinity, a dance where people hold hands together. And at the heart of the divine, the heart of what God is, who God is a flow, a relatedness, a perfect communion, a circle dance of love. And God isn't just a dancer, God is the dance. And I want you to be part of it. I desperately want you to be part of it. I want you to be in the circle holding hands. Together. We are part of an eternal mystery. And that mystery upholds us, it enables us, it gives life to who we are and what we are. And it doesn't matter how ordinary you are. It doesn't matter that you have a dark side. It doesn't matter that there's things you do you're ashamed of. God's love always wins. God's love cannot lose. Nothing can stop the relentless outpouring that is the circle of love, and you are in it. You are in it. And this is the blessing that comes to you when you offer yourself to God and give the very best that you can to your God and to your church. And I promise, what you will receive back will be far greater and far more beautiful than anything you will ever give. The circle of love never wears out, it never fades away, and it will continue long, long after our little time on earth is done. Amen.